you would actually opt to not draw cards. You would just play off the top of your deck because the opposing Emerald Steel player would draw additional cards if you were able to discard. So you tried to get 0 cards in hand as fast as possible. With Prince John being removed from the deck, largely, I know some people are still playing it. With it being removed from the deck, Ruby Amethyst can now prioritize just drawing cards to make sure it gets up to the higher ink levels to reach its powerful, very impactful Madame Medusas and be prepared. And it's actually made the matchup a lot better. I felt like the matchup against the Prince John version was much, much, much harder to deal with and much, much, much higher variance. You see the be prepared discard is a great discard target. For this Bucky, of course, being undisputed, we talk about be prepared maybe being kind of a bad card. That card is particularly bad versus Emerald Steel, and again uninkable. So
especially because Emerald Steel early in the game usually goes super wide. So playing a card like Beacon Undisputed is essentially worthless. That Andre's just going to choose the worst character on his board to banish in that instance. We do see this Flynn Rider being played, another Floodborn character, a pretty powerful ability if you can get the discard engine going, reducing Alberto's hand down to 0 cards. Flynn Rider has 4 lore naturally, but loses a lore for every card in Alberto's hands. Fortunate for Alberto, though, he has a pretty sizable hand right now, especially with only 1 Bucky in play for Andre.
yeah, absolutely. I would say that the one thing you have to consider is Andre is definitely sort of has his foot on the gas and is taking the role of the aggressive deck. And I think that doesn't really favor Andre in this position, or sorry, Alberto in this position, because Alberto is just sitting at that 3 ink. And you can start to see the disparity of this play draw in terms of Ruby Amethyst. Once you are a full turn behind, the amount of pressure that the Emerald Steel player can put on you is just immense. It is just immense. It's very, very hard to deal with at this point. So yeah, I think Alberto's in a very, very tough spot. Having something like a board clear, even if it comes off the top of the deck, is extremely far away. We're talking about 3 full turns. But if Alberto does not interact with this board in 3 turns, Andre could actually potentially get close to it, and if not, win the game.
Absolutely, especially considering when Alberto is card every turn, play another card. If he doesn't find cards that replace themselves, hand sizing it pretty low. This Flynn is usually a closer for Emerald Steel, but even though we use that term closer, it may still be something impactful this early on in the game. We're only 3 or 4 turns in at this point, and like you mentioned, being so far away from something like board clear, another Flynn coming down, forcing Alberto to discard a card. We see that spell book being discarded as well. The game could be over pretty soon.
Yeah, that is often.
Chad, we're cooked.
It's not good. Proportions are wrong. It needs to be stretched that way.
Alberto's in a tough spot because there's a lot of pressure here, and if Andre finds access to multiple discard outlets on a single turn via Sudden Chill and the Floodborn, and gets Alberto down to a very few cards in hand, I mean, these Flynns are absolutely just going to run away with the game.
It certainly hurts that Alberto has a few dead cards in hand, just those uninkable high-cost cards. Be prepared being one of them. I think I did see a Brawl in hand, at least one. You might see that come down on the Flynn Rider here to at least slow down Andre a little bit. But even just paying the 3 ink for a Brawl, and if that's all you do, it's not replacing a card in your hand. You're still needing to ink for turns because you're trying to get up to that 6 or 7 ink. It can be pretty slow compared to how fast Andre's going as well.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if we see the Maui come down here, just to remove that Aladdin, sort of take over the board. Obviously, it can't interact with the evasive threats, which is pretty tough. I'm also particularly interested. I think that the turn box followers, I'm wondering if it's actually going to sit, and Alberto's going to quest it next turn and get the draw next turn, just to sort of insulate against some of that discard. That being said, it could be hit by Let the Storm Rage on. There's actually a lot of complex lines going on right now, so we do see him quest. We're going to see that banished. Interesting that Alberto chose to ink before doing that, because you do get more information by taking that action first. We do see a Merlin Rabbit. Looks like it came off the top. And there it is. It's going to be the card played.
Card drawn. Merlin Rabbit drawing you a card when it enters and leaves play. So essentially being a guaranteed 2 draw off of Merlin Rabbit while developing a character.
So I believe we see Alberto playing towards the Madame Medusa in hand. Madame Medusa hit one of the Flynn Riders. Also keeping cards in hand to stop the Flynn Riders from questing for 8 and just running away with the game. Is prepared to discard here. And like I mentioned, the really scary part of this discard is Andre finding multiple instances of discard on their turn. that would be harder to deal with because we see Alberto keeping that hand size healthy to stop those Flins from doing anything. You see the triple Flynn, so I think we're going to see Alberto prioritize that even more as we progress through this game. So that card draw is just very, very impactful. Finding that Merlin Rabbit off the top is actually super important. Okay, that is what we didn't want to see. Luckily, Alberto didn't sort of, by finding the Merlin Rabbit, the play was clear. I wondered if Alberto was going to tempo at the brawl and play it against the Flynn, because often that can be correct, and you just have to hope your opponent doesn't have the Diablo. But Alberto did keep it in hand, so we'll have an answer for this Diablo, which it is a must-answer card, especially at this stage of the game. I actually feel like, with if Andre hadn't dropped Flynn into Diablo, which is basically worst-case scenario, Alberto would have sort of more of a window to kind of come back, where right now it does feel a bit overwhelming because Alberto is 2 full turns away from, at least, from the Be Prepared, which is absolutely necessary to answer this board. If you can find a way to sort of get go into Andre's turn with 4 or 5 cards in hand every single time, you can turn off these Flints. That is relevant. Okay, we do have the Madame Medusa on the, so we're going to keep those 2 cards in hand. The Madame Medusa on the Diablo, yeah, that was... I did actually miss that when I was evaluating on the previous turn. That is a much better play than the Brawl.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, everybody has a dream, including Flynn Rider, and I think his dream is just to discard your opponent's hand as much as possible so you can get all of that lore by developing a Madame Medusa. Getting rid of the Diablo, as you mentioned, is a must-answer card, especially playing against a deck that is trying to draw a bunch of cards.
That is brutal. So that Ursula having a target, which I think was a top deck, you can see the anguish in Alberto's eyes. Yeah, because... Now this game is, it's in a really tough spot because we're questing for so much, and Alberto really doesn't have a way to get more cards in hand to turn off these Flints. Probably has to find Be Prepared off the top. Even if he does find Be Prepared, I think he's still in a losing position.
All right, and just to show how much Andre understands about this matchup, Alberto is sitting at 6 ink currently, knowing that next turn he's looking for a B Prep. Playing the Ursula Deceiver just to see if he has it to discard it. He didn't. We don't see the B Prep. But it does look like we're going to double brawl the Flyns this turn, getting rid of 2 of them so that it slows Andre down a little bit. But goodness gracious, Andre just has to quest for game on that turn.
Yep, you can see how tough that is for Alberto in some of those positions, being on the draw, just being that full turn behind. Like, you could be punished from, anywhere from 5 to 10 more lore than you would if you were actually on the play. Like, that 1 turn difference is extremely significant against these Emerald Steel decks.
And this is why I think something like seeding for day 1 is super important too. A lot of players will sometimes get to a certain point knowing that they can make it in, and then will decide to split matches with some players. But being a higher seed, giving you the opportunity to be on the play for the majority of the day, can end up being a big payoff. The game's not over yet. It's still 1-1, but we talk about how important it is, especially in this matchup, that it is to be on the play, and that may end up making a difference.
You can debate the sort of the efficacy and the advantage you get by being on the play all day long. But if I was in the position of competing for day 2 and I didn't have to split in order to have this, basically guaranteed way of getting in, because sometimes it's a position where if you win, you get in, and if you lose, you don't. But if you go 1-1, everybody gets in. So so it makes more sense there. But if I was undefeated, I would definitely play for seeding.
Keep playing.
We can talk about the advantage all day long, but one thing you cannot deny is that the advantage is non-zero. It is non-zero.
Yeah.
And we can have the debates on how significant it is, but it is non-zero. And playing for seeding and going first is a huge advantage.
Absolutely, but we still have another game to look at. We have Andre and Alberto. We'll see if this play draw disparity means anything in this match going into game 3. Let's check it out. Looks like the players maybe starting their altar, drawing from the top of the deck, looking at the 7 cards, able to put any of them back if they want, and then draw that many cards from the top of their deck, which is a very generous way of sculpting your opening hand. I'm sure Alberto is looking for those brawls. You mentioned that earlier is something you need to find.
Super happy to see this, by the way, because I was very interested to see how Alberto was going to do that hand sculpting. Does look like he kept a brawl in hand. Throws a full 5 back. It can seem like the Ruby Amethyst player in this matchup is throwing a lot of cards back. Maybe they're 5, maybe they're 6, maybe they throw a full 7. But it comes down to is you need an answer to that Diablo. It is super important. Also, you want to find inkables, but more than anything, we have to have an answer to the Diablo card because we pretty much never win those games.
And so I'm sure for Andre, looking at his altar, he's just looking for the Buckies, the Diablos, those very aggressive early cards to shift into especially being on the draw here to try and get Alberto down to 0 cards before he can get up to 7-8, especially knowing that Alberto is going to basically be 1 turn ahead.
Absolutely. Interested to see if Alberto has the 1-drop. Again, Alberto is playing 8 1-drops, so is very, very likely to have one in the starting hand. Almost certainly above 80%. We do see the broom there.
I love the Magic Broom card. I believe it was released in Ursa's Return. When you play another character, you can banish the Broom and draw a card. It's kind of not an inverse of Turnabox followers, but a very interesting version.
So, of course, we have the Diablo on turn 1. It does look at the hand, but what's interesting is that if Andre doesn't have the follow-up of the Bucky, the Ursulas are very live to hit relevant targets here in the form of 2 friends on the other side. So that information was actually pretty helpful for Andre if he doesn't have the Bucky on 2.
Alberto inking a Maui here. I did see a Flynn in hand. Let's see if he decides to play out the Flynn.
Interesting. So Alberto, knowing that the opponent has seen his hand, knows that he has 2 friends on the other side going into turn 2, opts to not ink the friends on the other side because, of course, if you have 2 in hand, you're still going to keep the 1. It's just, it's a very interesting ink decision that I think could be overlooked quite quickly. You might snap ink that. It's just, that's probably where most of the very, very hard decision points in Lorcana are in these ink decisions, because if you do make a mistake there, and you have to make that decision with very imperfect information, those mistakes actually cascade into one another more and more as you progress through the game. It is hard to go through an entire game actually inking perfectly every single turn. It's probably virtually impossible.
It feels like there's 1,000 micro decisions you have to make in this game, inking being one of the more important ones. And having talked to some of the players in the top 64 today, a lot of them said stuff very similar to that of they saw the cards they needed to see, but also there were some games they felt like they had to play perfectly to get to this spot. When you have when you have over 1,800 players in a room playing each other, you know, you have to play as close to perfect as possible.
Yeah, so this is super important, by the way. We did actually see the Ursula inked, and we see a morph played out on 2 instead. We're going to see a Diablo shifted. We're going to sing, get rid of that Flynn.
Let's see if Andre has a Beast Tragic Hero in hand, because I imagine that would be something to be looking to play here on the next turn. And this Morph Beast, of course, only having a cost of 3, and could be a very strong card in this matchup.
We do find the immediate answer to the Diablo in the form of the Brawl. Berto was ready for that card. And we can see how impactful it is to be on the play in terms of answering fast with the Brawl. You know, not giving him multiple turns to potentially draw cards here off of Diablo.
See it, Tinkerbell, Giant Fairy being inked.
I do see the Beast. There it is. In front of the hand here.
Yeah, Beast and a Bucky right in front of it.
Interesting. I'm wondering if Bucky actually came off the top there. I'm assuming it did. So do you play the Bucky out first, or do you go ahead
That's what I was questioning. Do you play the Bucky and then try to get the discard with the Floodborn next turn?
So there's actually 2 value matrices that are going on here. Is that if you play the Beast now, you do get the additional card draw, but if you play the Bucky, you're going to make your opponent discard the card. So which card is more valuable than the other? Which play over the course of the game gets you more value? Because the Beast, you want it to come down as early as possible so it doesn't get Madame Medusa on 6, which is a card that Alberto prioritizes, and a play line that Alberto prioritizes to stop that card specifically.
We do see the Beast being shifted here, valuing that card draw over the discard. And Andre also still knows that there's those friends on the other sides. You know, they're sitting in Alberto's hand. Maybe other ways for Alberto to gain some card draw. I do see Prince Castle. I think there's another Maui in there as well. Spellbook's not going to be super helpful that we see off the top. Would be a good discard option, though.
I do think that is correct, by the way, this Beast play. I do think that Andre drawing more cards is more significant than making Alberto discard cards, especially if we're talking about single digits of cards. Drawing 1 additional card as the active player is more impactful than making Alberto draw discard a singular card when Alberto has 5 cards in hand.
See Andre inking
and we're going to snag that other friends on the other side. That's a huge play. That was, I don't think that Ursula was actually in hand before. I could have missed it, but we did ink the 1 Ursula, and that is super impactful. That's brutal for Alberto. That's the last thing Alberto wanted to see.
Yeah, Andre getting a good look at Alberto's hand, seeing the Maui there, knowing that the Beast isn't going to be safe. Potentially next turn, if the Maui stays in hand. Alberto being at 4 ink currently, knowing you could play the Maui next turn, but also getting a look that Alberto's hand isn't great. You had the Sorcerer's Spellbook, getting rid of the friends, also just has the Queen's Castle after that, so really no way to interact with Andre's board outside of the Maui, and we do see Andre not questing anything in response to that.
So we did top deck the Merlin Rabbit, because we have to find the answer to this Beast Tragic Hero. Like, that is just where we're at in the game. It's like we have to find the answer. We have to get the 6 things. We have to Madame Medusa it. We cannot let Andre just draw 2 cards every single turn.
An interesting fact about Alberto's deck, too, he's only playing 3 Madame Medusas as well. So I know sometimes, I mean, I feel like 3 is pretty standard for a Ruby Amethyst list, but having 1 less copy of the card, making it slightly less likely to see the card, you know, that's essentially the only answer for the Tragic Hero here, unless we can get to 7 ink and play Be Prepared.
So it's actually a very contentious subject on how you split the Madame Medusa and the Lady Tremaines specifically. Some players prefer 3-2, so 3 Madame Medusa, 2 Tremaine. Some prefer 4-1, so 4 Madame Medusa, 1 Tremaine. And some actually go as far as to do 4-0. It's very, very interesting. I'm not sure what Alberto is running specifically because the list I have for him doesn't have Sorcerer's Spellbook in there for it. So I actually think that the list that we're looking at,
may be wrong.
The list might be wrong. So I wouldn't be surprised because we haven't seen Lady Tremaine if Alberto is actually on the 3-0 or 4-0 of Madame Medusa.
You see a Flynn Rider coming down from Andre as well in this previous turn, forcing Alberto to discard a card. We do see Spellbook. Discarded, but here we go on the gas again for Andre.
So Alberto knows the out here. This is a very menacing board. Alberto has to get up to 6 ink and ideally wants to get up to 7 ink to clear this board. Andre still now has 3 cards in hand. Alberto is just playing the controlling role of this matchup. And you can see him prioritizing card draw over everything else.
Yeah, just digging deeper and deeper for that answer that we were talking about.
And that's how you know Alberto is a good Ruby Amethyst player. Alberto knows how he's going to win this game, and he's focusing on how he wins the game rather than how he stops himself from losing. They're very, very different things. Playing to not lose and playing to win are vastly different things in Lorcana.
Look on Andre's hand. I do see a sudden chill in there. And then if you have a Floodborn, you could be discarding 2 cards this turn.
Definitely have a Floodborn. There also is a Zeus, so there's removal in hand as well. Along came Zeus, sudden chill. I believe it potentially is something like a Robin Hood, Champion of Sherwood. Of course, they'll let the Storm Rage on.
About the Storm Rage on with Flynn to get rid of the Maleficent Sorcerer.
Top
Draw a
decks.
card.
Yep, top decks another, let the Storm Rage on. I do think we also have an Aladdin in hand, that counts with the whole hand, so let the Storm Rage on, sudden chill. Along came Zeus, Aladdin, and Robin Hood, Champion of Sherwood are in hand for Andre.
Lots of options here to consider. He was looking through the Aladdin and the Along Came Zeus. Looking to sing Along Came Zeus to banish the rabbit.
Potentially, because if you banish it now, you stop you're going to stop the bounce, which could come. But we're going into the 7 ink, so honestly, Alberto wants as many draw steps as possible going into this next turn.
The Aladdin played, Alberto already having a card to discard. Discarded.
Starting to feel like Be Prepared or Bust on this board. And Alberto does have access to multiple draw steps in the form of drawing for turn, and then also potentially running this Merlin Rabbit into something they quest, but I don't think that Andre will give him that opportunity. Because Andre probably also knows that there is one clear way that Alberto comes back into this game. That being said, even if Be Prepared hitting this board, we would probably reach parity, because Andre would still have multiple cards in hand, and Alberto would probably get a similar amount of cards in hand with an empty board. But that is best case scenario for Alberto.
Yeah, I think this goes to show the power of shifting a Beast Tragic Hero early. Andre has been able to draw multiple cards over the past couple turns, keeping his hand full, not only to create a threatening board state, but also, like you mentioned, to help have something to play if Alberto does find what he has to find in order to get back into this game.
Okay, so I believe what Alberto is setting up for here was thinking about was actually running into the Ursula, banishing the Ursula, and then playing something like Beaking Undisputed, but has opted to think about that play a bit more because a Monomim Snake was top decked That is more access to draw by bouncing this Merlin Rabbit back up. Also, is potentially thinking about singing Beaking Undisputed. But we have to remove that Ursula. That is just a fact. So I think he's also now thinking about the Maui. Should I play the Maui and sing Beaking Undisputed? Very interesting. So Alberto actually has a few plays here. We see him debating those.
Exactly why in later rounds of the game, these players have extra time to play with. A lot on the line for these prizes, so they need to have a little extra time to make sure they're playing the most optimally.
Tough play for Alberto here.
Yeah, this is tough because if you play towards the board, right, playing something like a Maui, challenging with the Ursula, singing Beaking Undisputed, forcing Andre to banish a card, and you're getting there, but the Beast Tragic Hero is still going to be around. I imagine the Flynn is also going to be around as well. We do see him challenge into the Ursula with both the Rabbit and the Maleficent, opting instead to just bounce the Rabbit back with a Madam Snake and draw an extra card.
Okay, still the 4 for the potential. Oh, another Merlin Rabbit. So it is very, very clear that Alberto knows there is a almost singular out here and is very much trying to dig deeper into the deck. But once again, when we pass back over to Andre, Andre's going to be drawing 2 cards every single turn, and that is just so hard to deal with, considering that a lot of those cards inherently 2 for 1 as well, because when Bucky's on the field, every flood board is going to make Alberto discard. So Andre's just accruing so much value with this current board state.
Alberto again just preparing to have a card be discarded, it looks like. Passing it over to Andre. We'll see what he draws, both off the Beast and for turn.
So 2 cards for turn here. Floodborn plus Floodborn, another Flynn. Yeah, the Flynn pairs can be pretty intense with Bucky on the field. Of course, Alberto does currently have 5 cards in hand, so that Flynn is not doing much.
And without any other way to discard a card, I'm sure Alberto will continue to try to keep his hand full so that Andre can't get any value out of these Flynn Riders, at least not for questing.
Interesting. So does Alberto have 6 cards in hand? Because I see the upside down card, which I'm assuming is sort of their preemptive discard.
I think so.
Yeah. I was thinking that I was like, that doesn't seem super safe.
Nothing has been right. Without her, my existence as a democrat is meaningless. Now, do you understand why I was trying to drive you away?
Plenty to work with, multiple cards in hand for Andre.
Another game.
Bloodborns that can be played, potentially played Ursula to Silver Ball. We have a couple spawns in hand as well.
Oh, I
Sudden
doubt
Chill
it.
in there. Potentially play an Ursula to Super Ball. Look to sing Sudden Chill, force Alberto to discard 2 cards next turn.
I'm not your loot.
Online.
I was looking for a way out in Gold Dust chest. Well, there it is, at last. Game. Get off my back once and for all. We just want to go home. Well, I
Alright, so Andre considering here.
Where is he going?
We're likely going to play out a Floodborn, trigger that Bucky. Going to be a discard of the Jafar that we saw draw on this turn. So we can go to banish them for Alberto.
The kids are gonna love it. I will leave you now. I've gotta go carry out my evil plan. What do you mean? I already told you. The plan.
Our silver cards in hand for Alberto, so Flynn Rider not having any lore.
Noticeably, Andre is still only at 4 lore. Surely that will change this turn. But it still feels like Alberto has a way back into this game is able to find that's board sweeper in the form of Be Prepared. I know we focus on it a lot, but when you get to these board states where Emerald Steel has many characters on board, has the Bucky that's just accruing value, has the threat of the Flynn, and of course the Beast Tragic Hero is drawing 2 cards. It feels like that board sweeper is just exactly what we need to come back to this game. But soon enough, I'm just going to start running away with it.
No! He turned
Right,
it
the
into a
longer the game goes on, the more time Alberto has to
Sorry.
as well. So
I got a little
like
carried
Andre
away. Being turned into a
plays
free-to-play is the
balance
worst thing
game,
that can
not
happen to a
wanting
game.
to
How can I explain
overextend,
it?
but
It's
still
like
needing
riding
to
a
play
bike,
Floodborn
but we don't
characters
deceive.
to
Let's try to leave
force
this dimension
Alberto's
fast.
hand
You
to
never know
go
when
down
it can
with
change.
the Bucky, potentially turning on these Flynn Riders.
What's
But
that,
the
Papa?
moment, if he overextends too far, and Alberto does find to be prepared,
Another one.
then it does give Alberto a chance to take over this game.
Okay, we do have a Beacon Undisputed being sung by this Merlin Rabbit.
Okay, can we play now? No,
We're
come on.
looking to
What I told you,
banish
user.
the
There's
Jafar
nothing worse
Dreadnought
than a play.
from the King Undisputed. Taking a moment to think about if that's the right play.
Yep, I think that is correct. Is actually the Flynn, because you can see that Alberto's prioritizing those cards ahead. Potentially, you can make the argument that Flynn is forcing Alberto to play in that way. He's forcing him to play in a way where he keeps more cards in hand that he would originally like, because he wants the Flynn to be turned off. But also, if you're extrapolating from the previous game where Alberto was able to turn off the Flynn for most of it, you just come to realize that might be the most value target on the field right now. We do have another Merlin Rabbit. I mean, I know Alberto is sitting there furiously wondering where these Be Prepared are, because he has looked at so much of the deck. That means that we have kind of come back to a somewhat reasonable board. What makes this board state unreasonable, by the way, is the Beast Tragic Hero. Andre has gone so many turns, drawing 2 cards per turn. He has now what is 5 cards in hand. Of course, it was 6 going into this, and he was able to ink. It is just a lot for Ruby Amethyst to deal with. Ruby Amethyst is usually the deck that's drawing cards, and it's the control deck, and you see this green steel, this emerald steel deck is the deck that is drawing more cards. It has more presence on the field. Like, it's just not what you want to do with Ruby Amethyst.
Yeah, I mean, I would also like to count this game is going on at this point. This beast. The beast was shifted on turn 3, so it's been out here for quite some time. Not able to find the Medusa. Be prepared. The beast is definitely making this game so much better for Andre. Killing his hand. We see another one being played as well, forcing another discard from Alberto because of the bucket.
So there is actually a silver lining there, because the longer you go without seeing your impactful cards, if you do sort of last until the end game, you are now likely to find many of them as you go off the top. So we could go Be Prepared into Madame Medusa, and those could be good sequences for Alberto. Alberto's really not on this game yet. I think if it doesn't find any answers this turn, can be an extremely tough spot, because 6th floor, manageable. The problem is that Andre has cards in hand, so refill after that. But still, that's manageable. If we draw 3 cards next turn, like, it's just, we're getting to a position where it's just getting ridiculous.
We've got work to do.
If you're in Alberto's position, and you don't have a way to balance this Merlin Rabbit or get something better to do with it, do you ever challenge the beast with Merlin Rabbit just to put damage on it, draw an extra card?
Absolutely. Unless I have something else to do, absolutely. I feel like because that's a double win. Not only are you getting an additional card, you're looking at an additional card in the deck, and you're obviously looking for a specific answer, but you also stop that beast. Now, Andre doesn't necessarily need 2 beasts to be triggering the turn. Just drawing 2 cards is a lot, but I would definitely consider it to look at an additional card. And, like, this, I'm trying to wonder if the current setup that Andre has in the field is a must answer for Be Prepared, or if we could potentially go something like Medusa into Medusa.
Right.
I think we would actually be in an okay position. But if we go 2 more turns with Alberto having almost no answer, I think it's going to be really tough. We do actually see that bounce back game. We see Queen's Castle come off the top. Alberto's just like, where are my good cards?
They're all at the bottom, it looks like. We will see the Madam Fox challenge the Jafar Dreadnought to banish the Jafar Dreadnought rather than challenging the Beast, but of course the Beast would live in that scenario.
I'm not sure if Alberto's inked this turn, but Alberto does have a Maui as a backup.
Okay.
Also, if he has inked this turn, has access to things like the Queen's Castle. If he wants to just kind of force attacks there, I wouldn't really do that. It'd be very bad for tempo. Could also just draw another card with the Merlin Rabbit that was bounced back to hand. The problem is like you get to a state, you can dig more into your deck. You keep going deeper. It's gonna do it now. You can keep going deeper, but the problem is like once you do cast that board sweeper, Andre's got like 7 cards in hand. He's gonna refill, and you're gonna be put in a similar position. That being said, we have seen Alberto navigate this position in a way that things are starting to feel a bit more reasonable than they were a turn ago. Like, that was a pretty good sequence, despite not having Medusa and not having Be Prepared.
Yeah, I mean, in this position, I feel like Be Prepared isn't... I mean, it's something you want to see to have, right? But even in this position, unless Andre starts playing a bunch more characters out of his hand, this isn't a very favorable place to play Be Prepared in. Maybe now if there's a Diablo.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I would say in this position, when we're looking at Bucky and the Beast, not a good Be Prepared target. But after this turn, because Andre has like 7 cards in hand, has access to 6 ink, I assume that enough threats will hit the field that Be Prepared will look like a good answer once again. But it really doesn't have to be. At this stage, the Madame Medusas will do a lot of work.
Might even be favored over Be Prepared just because you can get rid of the Diablo, you can get rid of the Beast. Even right now, the Maui is sort of threatening this Beast, not allowing it to exert, so that it doesn't get challenged in turn. Finding him out of Medusa to banish the Diablo. You know, Andre's still at only 6 lore, so it's not like he's extremely close to winning right now. You don't, I feel like you wouldn't want to waste Be Prepared.
Yeah, so I think I would still be okay with Be Prepared because both of these answers, or both of these characters, in my opinion, are must answers in the form of Beast and Diablo. Also, you get the added upside of finally getting rid of that dang squirrel. It's been sitting here since turn 2. And I do think we're going to see another very relevant threat hit the field as well for Andre. So once again, Be Prepared, looking great.
Does look like Andre's going to quest with the Beast.
Okay, starting to get to the higher lore amounts. I know Alberto's like, please, can my deck give me one of these answers? And oh, I'm not sure. I didn't see that one. It came off the top quick. So we're going to trade the Beast here.
We're finally going to move forward.
Looks like a brawl is in hand. That's important.
That'll be good to get rid of the Ursula Deceiver Ball, keeping Andre from singing any of the songs in hand, whether it's Stormy Dawn or Seven Chills or Reduce Alberto's hand.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, you hit that or the Diablo?
Oh, that's true. I forgot the Diablo was there as well.
I actually think it's not that, like, okay, it feels like you always hit Diablo. I understand that, but, you know, Andre, we know, has Sudden Chill in hand, could have things like with the Storm Rage on in hand, and could draw, you know, many, many more cards. It's probably still correct to hit the Diablo, but it's not just snap, this is the correct. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's not easy, it's just, there's a discussion to be had.
Alberto's hand is getting a little bit smaller, though. We're only seeing 3 cards in hand now. It's dwindling down, or Andre's hand.
We know that Andre has that double Sudden Chill. He's gonna have that double Sudden Chill.
Alright, it does look like there was a judge call for that game, so as they resolve through that. But, I mean, like, this has been such a back-and-forth game here. I feel really bad for Alberto, having not found those Medusas, not found those Be Prepared. But like you said, the further we dig into this deck, the closer they are to being found. As this game goes on, I think Alberto is being better positioned because we know those cards should be coming.
So I think Alberto has sort of defied logic up until now. Not only in not finding the cards that I think he's clearly looking for, but also in like the game. Like Andre has not been running away with the game. He's had 2 beasts triggering, has drawn so many more cards, but hasn't found a way to cement this game. We did get word on that judge call, by the way. It was just a deck was knocked over and it was fixed, so sounds like a no harm, no foul situation.
Yes, absolutely. We should be able to get back to the game now, I believe.
And here we are back onto our board. Looks like that Flynn Rider was the play for Andre, causing a discard. We also had a double Sing Cycle Chill. Look at the banish zone.
Yeah.
So exactly what we talked about. We put Alberto into a really tough position. Alberto still has not found our Be Prepared off the top, which is this is where you want to have it. So that Flynn's gonna start questing for 4. We could sing some pretty nasty songs with Ursula. The Bucky's not as impactful, but I'm sure Alberto's gonna be telling this story for a while.
I feel like this is the place that Andre's been trying to fight for all game as well. We saw early on him having played the Flynn Rider, not being able to get the cards out of his hand. You see Ursula singing Strength of Raging Fire, banishing both the rabbit and the goat.
So triggers draw. Now there's gonna be the discard. Okay, it is a Merlin rabbit. What if that had been
the Be Prepared? Oh man!
Obviously expertly sequenced by Andre as well, forcing gets the draw and then obviously sequences the cards in a way that the card is has going to be discarded. There's no way around it. Oh, did you see a nice clap? I think they know.
Yeah.
It looks okay. So Andre, 1 card in hand. There's simply 1 out to this. It is Be Prepared. It is not.
Oh, it's not Be Prepared. So Andre is gonna take game 3, moving on to the top.